Hello guys, as always, thanks for tuning in. Jay Helmsing here, coming at you with another review. Today we're going to be talking about the X Compact, brand new from Sig Sauer. We're going to dive into this bad boy here in just a few moments. Before we get started, if you like what you see here, remember to like and subscribe below. Also keep those comments coming. I'll keep interacting with you guys and answering those questions as they come up, and I'm available to do so. Let's go ahead and dive into this. Now I'll tell you guys, we're going to do this a slightly different format than I have before. So what I keep getting in some of the comments is, you guys like the content, you like the grittiness, you like the off-the-cuff stuff that I do here with these reviews, but I get a little bit long-winded. So for those of you who are interested in just the down and dirty nitty-gritty, what I'm going to do is provide you the pros and the cons right up front. If you want a detailed explanation or if you want the full review, keep watching because that's going to be in there as well. Some of you guys like my pedantic rambling, so I'll kind of get you on both ends there. So pros of this: excellent ergonomics, and I really just can't say enough about the ergonomics for its size. They've made a lot of changes to this compared to the X Grip, and there's some really good magic going on here. They really, I think, looked at the human hand, how you interact with this, and maybe took some feedback. It is very accurate, as you would expect from the P320 platform. It is, although, the subcompact length as far as the barrel and slide go, so it's not going to be as accurate as the X Carry or, even some of the compact size P320s or the full size P320. It is optics ready, as you guys notice. Now, this is an optic that is optic footprint that is cut for the Delta Point Pro and the new Sig Sauer optics. They're also going with the Delta Point Pro footprint, and that's what this will fit. So the Romeo 1, as of right now, will not fit on this, just something to take note of. It does have a lot of pull-ahead features that I found on the M17 that are also in this. The barrel, the loaded chamber indicator, just to name a few. The blacked out rear sight, so the sight plate has been changed. A few other odds and ends here and there that we'll get into deeper in the review. And it is a very potent carry package. So as you guys can see, that just kind of fills the hand nicely. It's very concealable, it's very small, it is pretty thin for a P320. And it's just got a very nice profile, and it does provide a lot of firepower and a lot of flexibility for something this size. Now let's go on to the cons, because there is no perfect gun out there. So here's some knocks that I found while playing with this. It is expensive, guys. This is in the $800 range, right around there, the same price I believe as the X Carry is, and that to me is just a little bit salty. There's really nothing too crazy about it. It does not have like a special target barrel. It does have an optics plate, but just some of the things are just kind of bells and whistles, and they don't really go into the core package that you'd expect for an $800 striker fired gun, at least. There's some drawbacks I'll get into with this loaded chamber indicator. Not a huge fan. I could just do without it, but I think they're going to that because it was mandatory on the M17, so now it's going to trickle out to everything. X-ray sights. I've had now 3 of these different guns, the X guns with the front sight, the X-Ray 3 sight, the tritium in it failed on the front sight. The back sights I've never given me any issues, whether it's the plate type or the actual sight that you have the dovetails there, but the front sight I have had fail on 3 different guns. This one is still alive and kicking, but I don't have any faith in it. The wider front ends up filling up this back notch almost completely, and therefore it's kind of hard to take precise shots. With the magazine loaded, which I do not have in there, the magazine, just your standard 15 round Sig magazine, with it loaded to full capacity, it is really kind of a monster to get this gun racked. It was actually kind of putting score marks and stuff on the bullets of the ammunition that I was feeding in there. You may want to load these only to 14 rounds until they get broken in, because like I say, that 15th round just makes these really, really tight, and as you guys know, that can induce some malfunctions under certain circumstances. Light options are going to have kind of a limited real estate here because this is a subcompact length slide, and the actual grip frame has been shortened for that. So you don't have a whole lot of real estate here to play with for your light options. Because it is shorter, I did notice when firing other guns back to back with this that you can feel that concussion a little bit more because obviously it's happening closer to your face. Not a real big issue for experienced shooters, but those of you out there that may be new to shooting, maybe looking at buying your first handgun, or maybe buying this for a loved one that may be timid around guns, that is something to consider. It's not going to be probably the most fun gun to shoot indoors or at an indoor range or something like that for target practice. So that's going to round out my pro and con list, and from here we're going to jump into the review as per normal. We're going to go top to bottom and just kind of sort this thing out. I'll tell you guys some impressions, some shooting impressions, some observations, things like that as we go. Let's go ahead and get the magazine in there so we can get the full profile, full picture going on. Starting out at the top, the sights. You guys might have heard me mention I'm not a real big fan of the X-Ray 3 sights. Some of you probably are. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. I know some people love these sights. I personally am not a big fan. I would rather have just the stock front sight in there because it's a little bit thinner and it gives me a little more light between these. And again, you heard me mention the issues that I've had with the tritium in that front sight. I'm sure there are more of you out there just because of how many that I've had that are going to have issues with the tritium failing. And I mean failing quickly, like within the first week or two of having guns in some circumstances. So I do not mind this big back plate here. It's not an issue for me. I know some people think that this masks the target too much. I don't really have an issue with it because it reminds me of a target sight, nice and blacked out. And what they've done with these this rear plate here specifically is it's copied pretty much exactly off of the M17. And instead of having the silver inlays around the tritium there, it is completely blacked out. So it's a nice flat black profile, a very nice kind of target rear. Again, the only thing I can really complain about is that front sight. Your mileage may vary there. You also have the Optic Cut, and again, as I mentioned in the intro here, this is going to be for the new SIG optics that will be coming out, and it's also cut for the Delta Point Pro. So if you have a Delta Point Pro, it will fit in there. However, you're going to run into issues co-witnessing. I got the largest or the longest sight that I could from Dawson Precision to put in the front of this to see if I could co-witness with a Delta Point Pro, and the answer is I could not. Okay, maybe they're working on something, but I have heard some issues where the sights can only be so high, or they just can't machine them with their tooling and things like that. I'm not sure if that's going to be a solution or not. You guys know a Delta Point Pro is a very tall sight, and it's got a high stack height, and because of that, it's just not going to be conducive to a lot of co-witness options, specifically with this gun. Now, the rear sight is not a big issue because you can just get the rear sight that comes directly from Leupold. You can just bolt that in there and have a rear sight on your Delta Point Pro. Front sight, though, is going to be an issue until somebody comes out with a solution, and I just don't see SIG jumping on that really quickly. So just some things to think about with the co-witness. Now, when the new sights come out, that may be something completely different. Perhaps the offerings from Dawson Precision will co-witness if we can find something to do with the back here. I'm not really sure what that's going to look like, but as you guys know, when you take this plate off, there is no dovetail. We're kind of left at square zero there. There's not a whole lot of flexibility, not a whole lot of options, unless you're comfortable running an optic without co-witnessing. That's another discussion for another day, but I will leave that out there for you guys to ponder over and or comment below. Let's talk next about this LCI. As you guys see it here, the little LCI. My issue with this bad boy is twofold. First off, the issue that I have with it is that when it's up and in position with a loaded chamber, it does mask part of this front sight. So it kind of eats into that little circle that you're looking for and creates a kind of funky sight picture. Not a big fan of that. Not a big fan of where it's placed. Not a big fan of the fact that it's right in the center and it's in the way of your, the V or the notch in your rear sight. I just think that could have been better executed. Not really a big fan of that. The other thing is gases from this are going to blow up into your optic. So in my testing, after about 50 to 75 rounds, the front of my optic was getting pretty muddled and pretty disgusting to the point where I had to actually wipe it down. In a self-defense situation, and that is not going to be an issue because hopefully you're not shooting boxes of ammunition at something with a gun like this. But for those of you that want to go to the range or use this in maybe carry optics or something like that, where you're going to be really toasting through some rounds with it, it is going to be a slight annoyance at the range. So just know, I'm not really sure that's the best thought out answer to that, and I really don't see the trade-off. The benefit for having that is not worth the drawbacks that I'm noticing for it. So that's that in a nutshell there. You do have the cool X5 style serrations on this that are more up and down, a little bit spaced better, so they're a little bit more grippy. However, I've never had an issue with the standard P320 serrations either, so that's kind of a take it or leave it for me, but it is aesthetically different there. Moving on to the rest of the gun, you have these smaller, the standard kind of P320 slide release or slide catch, whatever you use that for there. The grip frame is really one of the main points on this. This grip frame is really going to be a hot seller when it comes out available on the store as a standalone. I really think they did their homework here, and the grip is just very nicely done. This is compact length with a subcompact rail, so it does fit this subcompact slide, and it is compact in length with your 15-round magazines, just like you get in most of your compact P320s. Now the difference you're going to notice here is this kind of rounded back. So I do have a standard X grip you guys can kind of see. So if we stack these here, you guys kind of notice there the big flare you have here on the X Carry or the X5. That is done away with, and it's much more rounded on this gun. So that you have that rounding there. The undercut is also much more pronounced, so it kind of gives you a little bit more of a smaller grip feel. Probably really good for those that have smaller hands, even though this says M on the back for medium. I'm not sure if these are going to be sized. You know, have yet to see that in the X series. Perhaps someday they will, but for those of you that have smaller hands, this is really going to be a very nice feeling gun in your hand. Ergonomically, it is just very nicely done. Like I say, nice undercut here, nice rounded feeling back here. The texture is pretty well done. I'm not a huge fan of this kind of aggressive rough texture they do on there. I think that the more blocky textures are a little bit better for carry. These tend to just load up with skin and kind of irritate over time. But, you know, that's just my opinion, so take it or leave it. Other than that, that's really pretty much it. I am going to show you guys the magwell here, which is very, very nicely done, very neat. So it is a little bit less aggressive, a little bit less real estate because of this rounding than you're going to have on the standard X Carry or the X5. But it is a very, very generous, very neatly done magwell there. So loading, unloading, things like that are definitely not going to be an issue with this gun. They really did their homework. Now, let's move on next to the trigger itself. So just to verify, this bad boy is empty. There have been some slight changes made with the triggers. If you guys don't know, Sig is one of those companies that just kind of rolls out like beta models. So they continue to improve the line as it goes. They're very small changes, but there are changes made to this. And the biggest thing that I notice is that when you pull this trigger, so we got a very minimal slack in this one here as opposed to some of my other P320s. Very minimal slack. It is going to kind of go into this muddy stuff that 320s have. And that's one of my criticisms of the 320. It doesn't break off the wall. So you're going to have this wall, and then it comes through that wall, and it's just kind of muddy. It's not like a really smooth, it's just a lot of stacking in there and kind of craziness going on. And then all of a sudden the sear releases and the striker goes forward and sends it home. Now, the change I did notice is that where this releases, and I'll do this left-handed so you guys can see. So we got a little bit of take up, we're getting onto the wall there, a bunch of mud and junk and garbage there, and then right in a second it's going to release that striker. And as you guys notice, it basically releases the striker right on the stop. Okay, so I believe what they're doing there is they're trying to speed up follow-up shots because it should theoretically reduce your your trigger travel there, your reset, and it does, I believe, just maybe a little bit, not enough to be, like a stellar reset or anything like that. It is a very predictable trigger, but what I have noticed with these 320s is that you really have to either train a lot with them or work really, really hard to be accurate with them because of the way the trigger breaks. And I've spoken to other shooters who feel the same way. That wall is there, and then like I say, you come off that wall into this muddy, like thick peanut butter feeling, and then all of a sudden the sear is going to release the striker. It's not that you can't shoot it fast or shoot it well. I mean, you look at Max Michel, if you have any doubt that these can't be shot well, proof positive there. However, it's just not as universal as some other trigger designs, especially if you shoot single action, double action like I do, where you're going to have that really stiff wall and then it's going to break right off the wall. There's some mud to come through with this, and when you do that, sometimes I'll have a tendency to drop shots if I'm not really working hard to steady that gun. It's kind of hard to be sloppy with these guns, I guess is what I'm saying. So long story short, the trigger is pretty much the same as you're going to get into the other P320s, with the fact that it does release a little bit later and a little bit closer to the actual stop for the trigger itself. Other than that, I don't really notice much of a difference with this gun. So there you have it as far as the tabletop goes, the general overview, the general impressions. I really like this gun. I think it's going to be a hot seller. I think it's going to be a very popular concealed carry option. We'll get into some comparisons here in just a few moments, but first, let's take a look at some shooting impressions. All right, so as you guys saw, I took it through the standard battery of tests that I do, the standard litany of tests. I had 0 malfunctions with the gun itself, so no issues at all. It took both my hand-loaded ammunition and factory ammunition, and this has about 500 rounds through it now. So it is a fairly good baseline. I didn't really beat it too hard, but obviously more than just running a box or two through it. Some of the pull-ahead stuff with the M17, which really is kind of cool, and you guys will be able to see it right here. This weep hole for the slide to have, to have the slide or have the striker work in water conditions, or if this gun were to get submerged, is open up, and it is absolutely huge. It's the same size as on the M17, and that thing clears water like nobody's business. That is kind of a newer thing that they're doing ever since the M17 came out. I think that was part of what they discovered in that process, and you have that there on this gun, so that's kind of neat to see. I will also point out that unlike some of the other models that are coming out, like the Pro Series, this does still bolt from the bottom, and those of you that don't like those bolts, they're still there. I've never had an issue with them, but I did hear one person say that they had a friend who had those bolts work out and fall into the actual extractor portion there. So just something to keep track of or make note of. And the barrel is different, obviously because the LCI cut, but also, if you guys notice, they're kind of contouring this chamber differently. It's much more of a straight cut like you're going to see on the M17. The front of this has a more shouldered barrel, not quite as rounded as the earlier models. And there are very, quite a few different changes so far in the 320. This one here is an early model. We'll compare later. This is a subcompact. But you guys kind of see that trapezoidal cut there. That was very common when these came out before the drop fix and all that kind of stuff. Not really sure what's going on or why they did away with that, but after that they moved to something like this, which has not quite as pronounced of a trapezoidal cut, and it's also got some symmetry there, so it's the same on both sides. So you guys can kind of see that evolution there. And then these new ones all seem to be just more of a straight cut. So it's just basically just a square there, and it just has like the chamfering on the fronts. I'm not sure if they're doing that for cost savings or if there's an actual like a lockup reason or something like that, more surface area to lock up. I don't know what's going on, but that is a notable change that they have made in their barrels as far as the P320 goes, and it carries over to this X carry as well. Or excuse me, X compact as well. Too many C's, right? Let's get this thing back together and we'll round this out. I was able to shoot this fairly well. I would not say that I was able to shoot this better than a Glock 17, even though it does have more bells and whistles, it's more ergonomic, all that good stuff. And that's kind of where I get into that premium price tag. For the features on this gun, I'm not really sure if it's going to pay off for the average shooter. It is nice in the hand, it is very comfortable to shoot, it's a cool gun, but as far as accuracy goes, it was pretty much average. There's nothing crazy going on here, no special barrel, no special crowning, nothing as far as that's concerned, and it is a subcompact, so you're going to have the shorter sight radius and all that good stuff if you use the standard sights and not an optic. And again, if you use an optic, I'm not sure how you're going to co-witness that, so just some things to think about. Not that that's good or bad. I know some people carry optics without co-witnessing, but that's just where we're kind of at with this gun. Now, if you use the optic on it, which I did, it is just as accurate as pretty much any other gun with an optic on it. You're not going to have any issues with sight radius. Just some things to note, because I think this is going to be compared to like the X Carry with a longer slide, maybe even just your standard compact P320, because this one's actually going to be significantly cheaper than the X Compact is. And you know, there's some merits to having that longer slide, longer barrel, longer sight radius. That's kind of my report as far as shooting impressions. Recoil control was very manageable. Didn't have any issues there. It shoots like a P320, which kind of leaves me on the fence. I'm not really sure there's much of an advantage in this over the compact and really even the subcompact. Because these are like a dime a dozen. They're everywhere out there, and I just don't know if the bells and whistles, you know, make up for the difference. All right, guys, and I'd like to wind this up here with kind of comparison between several different guns, because I know this is going to be compared very heavily. We got the subcompact P320 here. We get the compact P320 here. I've got a grip frame from the X Carry model, so we can just kind of slap that over. We can do some size comparisons, see what we're looking at there with my compact. And I've got the old standby Project One Gun Glock 19, and it's not because I'm a Glock fanboy or because I'm a cop and all cops drink the Glock Kool-Aid or anything like that. It's because everybody wants to know what it looks like next to a Glock 19, or they know what a Glock 19 looks like because they're everywhere in the United States, and they want to see the size comparison between the two of them. So we'll get into those comparisons here in just a moment. Let's look at the family comparison. Let's start out with the subcompact. We got our subcompact slide here. This one does have a little bit of a finger floor plate that I added onto this, so you can get flush ones that's going to just truncate basically right there. So this will be shorter definitely than this gun is going to be. So let's take a look at these side by side and see what we're dealing with here. And as you guys notice, the exact same slide, no big surprise there. And then when we come down to the length, we're going to notice just a little bit. Actually, let me pop this mag out to give you guys a better impression. So if you look at basically where this butt plate ends here, that's where the flush mag is going to be. So, you know, some pretty significant size difference there as far as the grip is concerned, the grip height at least. And then if we look at the beaver tails back here, much more pronounced on this X compact. However, this one is obviously going to be much shorter and a little bit more truncated and rounded than you're going to get on the standard X guns like the X Carry. So that has been changed a little bit. Other than that, hopefully you guys can see, I mean, they're just really pretty much the same. There's not a whole big difference even looking at them besides the grip length. And that's kind of where I'm on the fence about. I mean, it's kind of cool, but it's pretty expensive just to be kind of a hotted up subcompact, I think. So there you have that. That's the comparison there. Let's weigh them while we have them out, and I'm going to stick that mag back in so we have an unloaded weight with the mag. Start out with a subcompact first. P320 subcompact, 1 pound, 8.5 ounces, and the X compact is going to come in at 1 pound, 9.4 ounces. So just a slight bit of difference there in weight, slight bit heavier with the X compact, and of course you have the availability of the 15 round flush fit grip, so flush fit mag, I should say, in that grip. So that's probably to be expected. Let's move this bad boy off to the side here. Let's take a look at the compact next as compared to this. So we're gonna should have the same length here as far as stack height and all that good stuff there, and we do. It looks like fairly close. There might be a little bit of a discrepancy, but not much. So about the same height, and we're going to have a little bit more length there in the compact versus this X compact. It's such weirdness, right? X subcompact, compact, whatever. X compact with a subcompact slide. So just a slight bit of difference there, as you guys see. And again, that's, you know, if it were me, I don't have a problem concealing a compact. I don't think you will either. So if it were me, you might be money ahead going with the X or with the compact itself over the X compact, because you do get that added sight radius. You do get that kind of you know, standoff with the muzzle being a little bit further out. You do get a little bit more velocity with that barrel. Well, let's weigh them and see if there's a weight difference. But you know, before we do that, you know, you're not going to notice a concealability difference in the muzzle, especially if the discrepancy is that small, in my opinion. So it would be kind of cool to see a compact slide on this. I might just do that so you guys can check it out. Might look kind of cool. But let's weigh these first. So zero these out here. The standard compact, P320 compact, is going to check in at 1 pound, 11 ounces. And our X compact is going to check in at 1 pound, 9.5 ounces. Before we get off of this, let's take a look at what this would look like if they put a compact slide on the X compact, right? And did something like that. Or if you made a Franken Sig out of it, or if you bought this grip module later on, because I think that's going to be the hot ticket whenever that hits the market. You have a gun that looks something like that. It is kind of cool looking, I think. So not the full length dust cover. You have a little bit of that sticking out like the M17 does. You've got that nice ergonomic grip there that holds your compact mags, and you have a nice sight radius there. I kind of like the way that shakes out. I really do. So something else you can do, I'm not sure if you want to spend $800 to do that, but there is that, and there is why I think that X compact grip is going to be a pretty hot ticket when it does come out. Let's look last. I shouldn't say last, let's look next in the family with this grip here, which is going to be the X Carry grip. Let me take this doodad out and we'll get this all set up, change this over like it's a big Tinker Toy set. All right. Kind of a neat thing you can do with SIGs. I don't really see, I think it's more of a novelty other than that. I mean, unless you just blow your frame to pieces or you want to have, you know, different frame lengths and grips and stuff. Other than that, kind of a gimmicky thing, but you can switch these over like they're, you know, Lincoln Logs or Tinker Toys or whatever you want to say there. So this would be reminiscent of the X Compact, or excuse me, there are too many XC guns. The X Carry with the carry length grip, okay? Comparing that to the X Compact, we see them without magazines, just having a little bit more length there. You guys can kind of see that beaver tail difference I was talking about being a little more pronounced on this X Carry. Let's go ahead and make sure I get the right magazines in here. 15 goes on this side, and 17 is going to go on this side. So that's what they look like with magazines in there. Just a little bit, you know, not really a whole lot to talk about, but you guys know grip length can make a difference in carry depending on the style you carry, and you're going to have that same difference there in the end with the length in the barrel. So there's what that comparison looks like for those of you who are interested in that. It's kind of hard to do with a light on there, but you guys get the picture. And last, let's take a look. Let's step out of the family lines here. Let's take a look at Mr. One Gun, Glock 19, and how that's going to stack up against the X Compact. X Compact. If we take the beaver tail into account, because this is a concealable part of the gun, and I have had people rip me to shreds because at one point in time I was carrying a Glock with the beaver tail on it. It is totally concealable in that manner. All right, for those of you who are like, oh, that's crazy, that's not an EDC setup. Yeah, it was an EDC setup. That's how I carried it, okay? So you can hide beaver tails, but it is a concealable part of the package. With the beaver tail in the equation, it is literally the same length overall as a Glock 19. Okay, so I'm just going to throw that out there first. If we take it out of the equation, we're looking at a length difference like so. So you do have a little bit of a slide length difference, a little bit of an advantage here for concealability on the side of the X Compact. And then if we look at actual grip length, we're looking right here, and I'm going to try to get these lined up as easily as I can. The X Compact is actually a little bit longer in the grip area here. Glock is going to be a little bit shorter in the grip area overall with the mag loaded in there. Let's look at what they look like on the scale. Get this bad boy zeroed out again. Let's start out with Mr. Glock. Mr. Glock weighs in at 1 pound, 8.5 ounces. And this SIG, I believe, is 1 pound, 9.5 ounces, just like it was the other time. So that means your Glock 19 is going to be just about an ounce lighter unloaded, and they should be the same loaded because they both hold 15 rounds. So Glock is a little bit lighter. And if you guys look at it this way, it's going to be a little bit thinner as well, just because this has the modular fire control unit and all that good stuff, which adds a little bit of width, and that's what that's going to look like there. All right, guys, so final opinion on the X Compact. Is it the wonder gun you've been waiting for? I'm going to have to say probably not. Now, this is a very reliable gun. It is a pretty accurate gun, and it is a very concealable gun. However, I think most of the stuff we have here is just aesthetics. I don't really see a whole lot of benefit as far as the things that they've done. The serrations are nice, but there's not a huge difference between that and the standard serrations. It does have the optics capability, but there are some drawbacks to it. The gas getting blown up into the optic, the fact that you lose the co-witness ability there, and you also have the screws inside this plate. So I think overall this is kind of more of a Gucci gun than it is a functional benefit to have this package, and it costs around $800. So I'm not usually one to really harp on budgets and cost and things like that, but when you can get this or this basically at half price, there's really not much of a comparison to me. If you want the latest and greatest, if you want, you've got to have an X, style P320. If you really want a Gucci gun or something like that, you'll probably like this okay. If not, if you just want a functional gun, if you want an accurate gun, if you like the P320 and you just want something that you have the modular capability with, the standard one will do just fine, guys. That is my take on this. As always, I appreciate you guys tuning in. If you like what you see, remember to like, subscribe, comment. Check me out on Instagram. I post a lot of stuff on there. J Helmsing, same name. As always, remember to go out there, get as much information as you can, use what you can, and to practice your craft at the range. And until next time, remember to always practice your right to the Second Amendment. As always, guys, J Helmsing.